think of it a little like this. University degrees, let's say you had a degree from a university in, say, 1925, right? That really kind of meant something in 1925. It was really a big deal because most people didn't go to universities. Most people, weren't really approved or invited to go to universities, and many people couldn't afford to go to universities. So in the 20s and 30s, to have a degree from a university was really kind of something, right? That really meant you were kind of in the top, 3 to 5% of, not necessarily just earners, but in terms of your academics, your intelligence, and so forth. And so it was used for the longest time as a proxy for an intelligence test, if you want to call it that, even though I'm not big on intelligence testing. Usually that's more obedience testing than anything else. But suffice it to say, it really kind of meant something. Now, cut to the 1970s. University degrees started getting more popularized. People started going to there more often. And so more and more people were getting degrees. And then cut to the 90s, where Gen Xers, for the most part, every Gen Xer I know, got told every day. It was basically an everyday thing. You would hear from guidance counselors, you'd hear from teachers, you'd hear from parents and uncles, aunts, uncles, all boomers, and you'd hear from everybody. Go to college, get a degree in literally anything. That way you can, prove that you're smart. But, it doesn't really do that, but okay, fine. Then cut to now, where kind of everybody has a degree in something, and it kind of doesn't really matter, right? Because everybody has one, right? So it's sort of like, you know what I mean? It really loses its punch. It meant something really big in the 20s and 30s. It doesn't really mean anything 100 years later in the 20s, and coming in the 30s, and in another 5-10 years, it's really not going to matter. That's called inflation. Okay, and in this case, it's degree inflation or grade inflation, if you want to call it that. Another good example was the head of the NEA was talking about one time. There's an interview I saw this a long time ago, and I've never seen it since. It got scrubbed from the internet. I haven't been able to find it. But I think it was the head of the NEA was being interviewed by this young lady who was, obviously new. She didn't know what to do, so she asked a real question, right? As reporters who haven't been jaded, right, and haven't been bought into the system, they accidentally screw up and ask real questions. And he was explaining, he was going on and pontificating about this idea of bonuses tied to grades, and as long as grades were good, then teachers would get their bonuses and so on. And the first question out of this young lady's mouth, instantaneous, with almost no hesitation, was, "Don't you think that will lead to grade inflation?" And there was this 12-second frozen, he went white as a sheet because he had no answer for this. And probably because, he was promised that would never come up in the conversation in this live interview. And here this girl asks this question because it's an honest question. Don't you think that will lead to grade inflation? You just promised people that they would make money if your students got good grades. So all you have to do is just simply give them good grades, and then you will get more money. So what do you think is going to happen? Well, I got to tell you, if my money is on the line and all I have to do is just give everybody an A+ paper and I get a bunch of bonuses, I'm going to probably give everybody an A+. In fact, you're going to get an A+, a smiley face, an exclamation point, and whatever else I can think of to write on there, right? Yeah, you got 1,005%. I mean, that's right, because now you've tied that to income. Okay, so now you understand the idea of how inflation affects things. Now let's apply that to dollars. The dollars used to buy stuff back in the day. That's why, I think a carton of eggs, since that's in the news right now, used to be something like a nickel, 5 cents for those of you who don't know. That's what it used to be. It used to be really cheap. A cup of coffee was a nickel, right? I mean, these things didn't cost very much in terms of dollars because there was a relative scarcity that existed in the marketplace relative to the goods and services that were available. This is a very basic functioning economy I'm explaining to you. Now, when you start counterfeiting enormous amounts of dollars, which is exactly what's happened, and not just on top of counterfeiting, there's also dollar hypothecation. Hypothecation is when you borrow $10,000 to go buy a used car, then that $10,000 winds up as a deposit in another bank, and then that bank lends out another $90,000 on that $10,000, and then the person who borrows the $90,000 goes and buys something, and then that becomes a deposit in another bank, and then that $90,000 gets ratcheted up to $81,000. Like this has the effect of creating something called monetary inflation. Monetary inflation happens before price inflation. Price inflation is a lagging indicator. That means that there are too many dollars chasing too few goods because the dollars themselves are conjured from nothing. There is nothing to back them, if you want to call it that. There's nothing, certainly nothing intrinsic about a dollar. A dollar is what a dollar will buy. That is a direct quote from Ben Bernanke, former chairman of the Federal Reserve. That is a direct quote, by the way, meaning that it's just company store credit. It's whatever it's worth at the time at the company store that the same people own. So the same people that are creating the dollars, the same people that are conjuring all of this, the same people that have access to all the dollars before anybody else have access to them, these same people also just coincidentally own all of the stores. So when you drive by a giant mega strip mall, it's all the usual suspects. And if you look up the owners of all these usual suspects, it's pretty much BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. You know, it's the same people. They all own each other. Look up Ian Carroll. He's done probably the best work that I've seen recently of tracking down where all this stuff goes. These are also the same people that control the issuance of the currency. Think of it like airline miles. Airline miles used to buy you X amount of stuff from the catalog. They don't buy you as much anymore. It's because they control the valuation of what you can buy with it, as opposed to the market. What is the market? The market is just people. Okay? So when a free market is just synonymous with a free people, meaning that the people don't work for oligarchs. They are also not in debt. Public debt is one of the single most destructive things that you could ever create. Even, Thomas Jefferson talked about this quite a bit. It is one of the single most destructive things that you can unleash on a younger generation, and a younger generation, and a younger, is this endless amount of debt that can never be paid off, which is what we're seeing today. So, this is why you're seeing the dollar become effectively worth less. Right now, when I just put them together, I conjunct it and go, it's worthless. Yeah, because it doesn't have any, not only does it not have any intrinsic value of any kind, it has no mathematical value. Mathematical value being that it's a fixed number that doesn't change, so that way you can actually let the market gauge itself. But when you just conjure it out of nothing, then that means the market can't hang its hat on any kind of numbers. Therefore, this is why you see in certain pockets, inflation is running wild. And then in other pockets, you're seeing enormous amounts of competitors being subsidized. It becomes effectively a worthless currency in any kind of mathematical sense, and a worthless currency in the practical sense, just trying to live our lives. I hope that answers your question.